All right, so my book review project for SLP Autism Spectrum Disorder, presented by Amber Brown. I'll go ahead and get started with this. My first book was the Social Detective Skills for Kids with Autism and Asperger's. It's a 6-minute social skills workbook. It was by Janine Toole. She has a PhD. There's about 100 pages worth of content and worksheets, and there's additional pages for notes in the back and throughout. I thought it was also kind of neat. There's a certificate included in the back of this book for the child or whoever is working on the workbook that when they complete it, they can kind of write their name on it and have a little bit of a certificate to show that they have completed this. So that was neat. And there's also additional resources included at the back of the book. All right, so that's what the book looks like. There's about over 45 6-minute worksheets in it that you can flip through and do, and they're all categorized at the very beginning, showing the topic and things like that. So you can kind of easily flip to what you're wanting to work on and then fill out the worksheet or make a copy and then have the child write it down, things like that. So it's pretty neat. So some basic information about the book. It was through happyfrogpress.com. That was where the book is published through and where you could purchase it through. On that website, I thought it was neat. They've got several things that you can actually buy on there for either social skills, reading comprehension, writing and study skills, and base or project-based learning. Different things that you can get on there and get, such as the workbook that I've got. The price, it was $7.95 on their website. However, I didn't know it was on their website, and so I ended up buying it through Amazon. And on Amazon, I ended up paying like double the price. So it was like over a little bit over $14. Um, and so that's kind of neat to know that we should try to go through the actual publisher's website rather than Amazon. Just some tidbit about this book. And there are additional resources online as well as in the book. There were apps that you could download and use the information from these sources. There's other workbooks, as I mentioned, that target those specific skills and topics that I mentioned before. There's task cards that you can order, and there's also free worksheets and activities on there that you could get for specific topics. Like I know following directions was one of them, reading activities, things like that. And so it might be neat to go on there just to check out the free stuff because anything's better if it's free. So the target audience for this kind of book is honestly anyone. Parents can use it, teachers can use it, SLPs can use it, or other professionals. Really, anyone working with children with ASD could use this if they're targeting social skills for kids with ASD. As far as the time it takes to complete it, there's about 5 hours worth of activities, all about 6 minutes sessions. If you did them all back to back, you'd end up with about 5 hours worth. All the worksheets are about 6 minutes in length, but you can take longer if you choose to do so to work more harder on a specific topic or talk more on that specific thing. And also something that was kind of neat in these, there were coaching guides for every session. And so if you are just a parent or someone that's unfamiliar with how to go about teaching these topics, the coaching guides really help to do that. So I thought that was really neat. So why I chose this book, I think that it's a great resource in general. But a specific example of my experience with, children with ASD. I'm working with a child right now in the school system, about sixth grade or so, that's struggling a lot with her social skills. And so I think this would be a great resource to try to incorporate to try to help her, build on those skills as far as making friends, communicating with friends, what to talk about, when to talk about certain things, and how to bring certain things up, things like that. I think it would really help to use for that kind of example. So it really caught my attention when I saw this book, just because of my personal experience with work and things. So the content, there's about 5 chapters in this book. Each chapter has specific information about various things when it comes to social skills. Chapter 1 is about what are social expectations, and it covers things like I have like for example, the first portion of chapter 1 is the topic of I have thoughts and feelings about what is happening around me. And then it goes into detail about how you would teach that topic. The next one is like other people have thoughts and feelings too. Their thoughts may be different from mine. The next one, I have expectations about how other people will act, and we call these social expectations. The one most of the time, all the people in a situation will have the same social expectations. In some situations, people might have differing social expectations. Another one, I get frustrated when other people don't meet my social expectations, just different things like that. Talking about social expectations in general and what that might be. And I was going to go over just like the first one where it said, I have thoughts and feelings about what is happening around me. When you look at it, it has different little topics saying, describe your thoughts and feelings in each situation. And so, for example, if your mom buys you an ice cream cone, what are your thoughts or feelings about that? And it gives the child an opportunity to talk about it or write it down and then discuss it later. And then once you flip the page, it's got the coaching guide. And so it's telling you how to go about teaching it. There's general notes about what you need to know, extra practice if you need to go over some more things if you feel like the child was struggling with it. What you can do after the session, as far as like reviewing things and talk about what you can do in a real life scenario. And then it leaves a space for extra notes or extra ideas that the teacher or advocate would want to write down to remember later. And so I thought that was really neat. It's kind of a step-by-step walkthrough on that. And then for chapter 2, it's how do we figure out social expectations? And then it goes over the same kind of thing, the same gist. It's got about 8 different categories that you can, or 8 different exercises you can go through. First one, I already know social expectations for many situations, work through that. Second one, when I don't know the social expectation, I can look to see what other people are doing. And so it's various topics like that, talking about how to figure out social expectations. Chapter 3, how do I know if I'm meeting social expectations? It's little mini topics in that is to check whether I am meeting social expectations. I can watch for clues, and then it gives you the worksheet for that topic. The next one, to check whether I'm meeting social expectations, I can listen to what other people say, and then a worksheet talking about that. Just a consistent gist in each chapter, but just these specific topics depending on what the child may or may not be struggling with. And then chapter 4, what to do when social expectations aren't met. Some topics in there were like sometimes ignoring social expectations can cause a problem, and then a worksheet associated with that. Another one, problems can happen with social expectations either accidentally or on purpose, and that's part of life. And then some worksheet activities associated with that one. So like I said, same gist, just different specific topics that you can look at. And then on chapter 5, I thought it was neat. They said the title of that chapter was Social Detective Skills in Action. And so with the social detective skills in action, it gave about 20 different, almost like assessments that I can look at, not like necessarily an assessment, but it's worksheets that the child can work through, but it doesn't have like the coaching and all that extra stuff in the back. It's just a formal worksheet that the child can fill out, basically testing their knowledge on what they've learned through the social book so far. And so like 5.1, hanging out with peers. And so it gives a scenario, and then it asks questions about that scenario. How would you handle this? Or what would you do with this situation? Um, all centered around social skills and cues that you can detect using that. So a lot of good information in it. And then, like I said, that certificate at the back to show that they completed it. So I thought that was super, super neat and almost, gratifying to the child that, hey, I finished this. It makes them feel achieved in some way. So strengths and weaknesses, the strengths, it's appropriate for anyone to use, affordable, hits great concepts, and there's lots of resources in it. Weaknesses, like I said, it wasn't easily found online. I had to go through Amazon because I did not know that it was available somewhere else. So marketing could be a little bit better. All the content is based on talking, and so it might not be as effective if there's not an interest in talking. There's no games or activities also included to perform each session. It's just kind of black and white, what it is, how to complete it, you know, go from there. There's not something that's going to pull in their interest in it necessarily. So the, presenter would be have to be the one to really incorporate some of that skills, that creativity. And its relation to class, it strategically covers pragmatic skills, in which we know that that's a key deficit and often impacts ASD clients, as we've mentioned that several times in class. So my opinion, final verdict, yes, I think it is worth the purchase. It's cheap, useful, and very easy to use, simplistic, and it like I said, it's kind of black and white. I believe anybody could look at this and effectively do it, and so I would definitely recommend the purchase. So the next book that I've got is a life skills workbook for teens with autism and special needs. Uh, it's kind of similar. It's a workbook, so I thought that was really useful. Just to have personally, just so you can print things out, use them in sessions repeatedly if you need to, or like I said, use at home. The activities in it help to develop independence, self-advocacy, and self-care. This one was by Susan Jules. There's about 213 pages, and the areas are included for notes and data collection just kind of throughout the book and as well at the end. And I thought this one was neat because it had a letter of an intent available for free. Once you buy the book, you can go online and then purchase it through the instructions that they provide in the back. And there's also additional resources listed in the back. So that's what the book looks like. There's about 18 topics with activities included in each. And so I thought that was very useful as far as, covering each specific topic. So what you need to know before you buy it, it is available on Amazon. That's where I purchased it. I did see that you could follow like the Susan Jules, like if you were to Google, for example, this specific book, or even in the back where I said there was additional resources, all by the same author, they provide links to try to purchase the book, but they all redirect to Amazon. And so I believe the book's only sold on Amazon. I personally haven't been able to find it anywhere else. So, I mean, if you're interested in it, you could try to look elsewhere, but Amazon was my go-to. It's about 15.95 on Amazon. Like I said, I'm not sure if it's available anywhere else to see if the price is different. The only place that I could find it was on Amazon, and it was about that much. And as far as additional resources, if you enjoy the author and enjoy this book, there's additional books available in the back that she refers out that she thinks would be beneficial if you're working on social skills. So target audience is really anyone. Like I said before, it's pretty self-explanatory throughout the book. Parents could use it, teachers could use it, SLPs, other professional, and anyone working with teens with autism, because this book is really centered around the teenage population. About the time it takes to complete, it's about a 3-hour read to get the gist of how the activities are and how they're separated out if you read it straight through. Like I said, there's 18 chapters, and all of them include activities and how to target each topic in the chapter. And there's also a list of self-care topics that are in the back, in which I thought that was pretty neat. Like it's almost like a checklist to know that you have taught each of these self-care topics. And let me flip to it really quick. Like for example, dressing yourself, personal hygiene, kitchen skills, home management skills, taking care of body health and safety, shopping, community, outdoor skills, things like that. Like there's just a plethora of topics in the back just to make sure that you have taught the teenager, these various things that are really life skills and necessary. So why I chose this book, I think that it's also a helpful resource, again, through my own personal experience. Um, Paper out here. As well as, similar to my school experience in another placement that I had, I worked with a teenager that dealt with some social skills, a lack of. And so in that teenager there were different things that I just noticed that it never clicked until I got this book, like things like oral hygiene and like self-maintenance and I mean obvious the social skills. There were big deficits that seemed like kind of all around, and this book really covers a lot of those basic health needs that might not just be obvious to teach to an ASD client. And so I thought that was really neat that this book really went into detail on how to go about doing that. Okay, so the content, there's about, like I said, 18 chapters, but the way the chapters are split up, it will cover like multiple topics within one chapter. And so, like, chapter one is basically just the introduction. It talks about teenagers with autism spectrum disorder and special needs. The it talks about just specifics on autism spectrum disorder, common symptoms of ASD, what teens are like with special needs, and neurotypical teens and their challenges. So this goes over just basic gist of what you need to know before you get started. Um, Chapter two starts getting into the worksheets and the workbooks and things that you can actually, activities that you can work with the child. It covers social skills, and those are things like the importance of social activities for teens with autism, um, augmenting social skills for teens with autism spectrum disorder and special needs, teaching social skills, existing social groups, encouraging your teen to be open and honest about their disorder, encouraging your teen to ask for home visits from friends, and engaging activities for teens with teenagers with autism. So different things as far as social skills are concerned. Um, and that's chapter 2 through 5. And so on, for example, chapter 3, it's just continuing social skills, the gist, the general aspect of it. Chapter 4 is specific towards activities to develop sensory skills. And chapter 5 is continuing that specific topic. Chapter 6 is where you start a new topic, such as friendship skills. Like I said, the chapter 6 itself is just general friendship skills that you might want to talk about, like why friendships are important for teenagers, results of the study on autism and friendship skills, and helping your child with autism spectrum disorder in general. Um, Chapter 7 is developing friendship skills. Chapter 8 is kind of continuing on that topic. And chapter 9 is peer pressure and peer influence on teenagers with autism. So it really gets into a variety of different things associated with friendship skills. Chapter 10 through 18 is probably the longest one because it's targeting specific life skills, such as safety awareness, self-determination, advocacy, the 7 essential life skills for success in teenagers with autism, 10 ways to build your teen's independence, personal finance, teaching adolescents with autism to drive, career path and employment, and then leisure and recreation. And so, as far as like additional skills that I believe are developed outside of these main topics, self advocacy. Sorry, I couldn't say that. I think that's really important in anyone, honestly, especially when you've got, ASD. We need to have some advocates for them and then help them to become self advocates for themselves. Executive functioning skills, practical living skills, and job skills, financial things like that. That's all important stuff that might not be obvious for us to go ahead and touch on from time to time, but I think it's very important skills that we need to make sure are covered at some point. And as I mentioned before, on each like on each section or each mini chapter within the chapters itself of topics, there are areas for notes where you can report responses of the teen, or anything that went on during the session that you were talking about. There's a place to kind of document that so you don't lose track and you're able to maybe reference this when you do go to an SLP or another professional. You can mention things that went on so it helps you keep almost data. So strengths and weaknesses, I believe the strengths of this book, the letter of intent, that was super important. I thought that was a benefit to have. It's included for free. The book is affordable, appropriate for anyone to use, and there's lots of topics and life skills that you can teach throughout it. And so I thought that was really cool. Weaknesses, it has to be bought through Amazon as far as I can tell. And if there's certain reasons why someone wouldn't want to shop at Amazon, that could be a bump in the road. The areas to write, like I said, you could document after each one. They're pretty small. It's relatively smaller than the book that I had prior that I went over. And so that might be seen as a weakness. It doesn't instruct you what to do if the activity doesn't work. And so I think that was kind of, inconvenient. It'd be better to know what you could do or how to handle it if it wasn't working or another alternative, but there wasn't nothing like that mentioned. And it's not as easy to navigate between the topics. You have to pretty much refer back to the table of contents to know what page you're going to go to the next one. It's not as bold to show you what categories are where. In relation to class, again, pragmatic language is covered, but this one's in teens. And when we think about treatment almost in SLP, a lot of times your mind kind of goes to children. And so it's important to remember that those children do grow up and you may still have to be working with them at the teenage or even at the adult age on specific deficits that are impacted. So I think that's a big relation to what we've talked about so far in class. The final verdict, yeah, I think it's a great resource to have, especially if you're working with, teens with ASD. It's cheap, several topics are covered, and it's very simple to follow. So I think that would be a good resource to have long term if you're planning on to work with anyone with ASD in the age range. And then here are my resources. Thank you so much.